There is a theory in society that everything we do or buy is controlled by several big corporations. While this theory of corporatocracy may seem far-fetched at first, it may not be too far from the truth. Stephen Schwarzman is a businessman and financier that's slowly been taking over the city of New York. In this video, we'll be going over Stephen's billion-dollar empire to show how much he's been pulling the strings without you even knowing.
I now have full control over your genitals.
Are you sure?
Yeah, check it out.
Stick around till the very end to find out his strategy for his empire. Stephen Schwarzman's lofty lifestyle as a billionaire now is a far cry from where he once was. Born in 1947 in rural Pennsylvania, he was the textbook definition of middle class. Stephen's family owned a small-time hardware store that gained a bit of popularity at the time. But Stephen wanted more on his name than just some simple hardware store. Stephen wanted to expand everywhere. He wanted the glitz and glamour of Wall Street. And so Stephen got to work, earning powerful partners during his time at Yale University, where he would earn his BA. But that still wasn't enough for him. Later on, after a short stint in the military, Stephen Schwarzman would earn his fourth MBA and finally set foot in the corporate world with all the connections and knowledge he's built up. Taking his first career moves in New York, he started as a small investment banker at Donaldson, Lufkin & Jenrette. But DLJ wasn't enough for the future king of New York. He wanted more. His hunger eventually led him to the Lehman Brothers investment firm, where he would meet his mentor and partner, former Lehman Brothers CEO Peter Peterson. Although the Lehman Brothers would eventually meet its end after collapsing from within, Stephen and Peter's partnership would continue to flourish. From here, starting a business together was the obvious next step. In New York, wanting greatness meant you had to stay hungry. Soon after the collapse of the Lehman Brothers, Stephen and Peter Peterson would start their own investment firm named Blackstone Inc., nestled in New York's finance district. Blackstone Inc. is an investment firm whose main focus is on private equities, an investment type that was very popular in the 80s, and for good reason. Private equity funds are a type of investment fund that pools capital from high net worth individuals, institutional investors, and sometimes even the fund managers themselves to invest in privately held companies or assets. Think of it like convincing other rich people to lend you money so you can bet it on whether or not companies go big or broke. But the money doesn't come that easy. Businesses were reluctant to pledge investments to a fresh company, especially if those investments can reach up to $100 million. Most of Blackstone's early profits were derived from small mergers and acquisitions projects that they oversaw. But the few millions that they would get from each project was just pocket change compared to Stephen's vision. But with time and with tenacity, Stephen and Peter were finally able to reel in bigger whales. Bigger investments meant bigger capital, and bigger capital meant big boy moves for Blackstone.
Yeah, boy.
But throwing money around is easy work. It's how you do it that Stephen shines in. Investing in private equities meant that you had to have this uncanny ability to look at a startup company and see into the future for what it could be. Stephen himself had this skill in spades, noticing industry trends and using data to invest in companies that may soon become household names. This ability to see into the future was a requirement for most investment bankers, but Stephen had a different approach to this ordeal. Stephen simply wanted more of everything. He wanted Blackstone's thumb in every industry's pie, eventually taking over entire industries for themselves. This meant that no matter where potential customers would go, Blackstone would take a cut of it. Once enough money was raised for capital, Stephen and Blackstone began making big boy moves. Their first target was the funeral home industry, an industry that's been overlooked by many because of how common it is. To others, it may have been a dead industry with minimal profit, but for Stephen, it was an industry for the dead, and dying never really went out of style.
Oh, okay.
Their first acquisition was the Lowen Group, a big player in the funeral home industry. Next, Stephen would target their competitors. Rose Hills was the first to go. Then came Lowen Group's largest competitor, Prime Succession. This was it. Stephen and Blackstone had a chokehold on the funeral home industry, their very first, and they were dead set on more. The next industry they set their eyes on was the garbage collection industry, an industry they successfully acquired. Although their focus of shares right now revolves around sustainable energy and other energy companies like Cheniere Energy Partners and First Energy, there is still one industry where they would shine. In 1991, Blackstone Inc. would venture into the high capital world of real estate. Real estate as an industry was very lucrative, seeing as land and properties don't ever really lower in value. With the amount of investments and profits that Blackstone had been earning with their industry acquisitions, it was time to jump with both feet in. Of course, money wasn't the only thing that Blackstone was investing. They were also investing time. It took the company more than a decade of small real estate acquisitions before they would finally settle the deal to purchase 3 of the biggest real estate giants. The first big real estate purchase they made was purchasing a majority stake in a company called Equity Office Properties, a company that provides office spaces in different locations throughout America. Some of these locations include Chicago, Seattle, and of course New York. Properties that New Yorkers pass by every day, such as Park Avenue Tower and 1740 Broadway, without even knowing that these huge office buildings are owned by Blackstone. And every office that rents space in these buildings pays dividends to Blackstone like a mob boss asking for protection money. The second big purchase that Blackstone has made in the real estate industry is the purchase of Hilton Hotels Corporation in 2007 for a $26 billion deal. While $26 billion is a hefty amount of money, this would be pocket change compared to the years of profit they would be seeing. Blackstone's acquisition of Hilton Hotels Corporation allowed them to take control of one of the world's largest and most well-known hotel chains. This was one of the first signs of Blackstone's eventual expansion to worldwide real estate, profiting from Hilton properties as far away as China and Europe. But the third of Blackstone's biggest real estate purchases has to be the one that hits closer to home. In October 2015, along with Ivanhoe Cambridge, a real estate subsidiary of Caisse de dépôt et placement de Quebec, CDPQ, acquired Stuyvesant Town Peter Cooper Village for approximately $5.3 billion. This acquisition was one of the largest real estate transactions in New York City's history. Stuyvesant Town Peter Cooper Village is a massive residential complex covering around 80 acres in Manhattan. It includes more than 11,000 apartments and multiple residential buildings, and is home to thousands of residents. Blackstone and its partners took ownership of the property with the aim of enhancing its operational and financial performance. The partnership actively managed and invested in the complex to improve amenities and living conditions for residents. But don't let these improved amenities steer you away from the fact that Blackstone is still a company that puts profit first. In fact, it could be argued that Blackstone was merely waiting for their tenants to lose rent stabilization in 2020, a policy that protected the tenants from sharp rent increases. And the sharp rent increase is exactly what Stephen and Blackstone tried to initiate, ultimately losing the rent dispute at court and ruling in favor of the tenants. As much as people like to hate corporations, some praise has to go towards Stephen for simply seeing ahead of the curve. But owning New York takes more than just knowledge. Stephen Schwarzman has the benefit of high education going for him, but that's not all there is to it. If there's one thing that Stephen values among other things, it is the ability to go out there every day without the fear of failing. Stephen emphasizes that failing is part of the process, and no one really succeeds without fumbling on their first steps. It happened to him during his early years in Lehman Brothers, it happened to him during the early investor calls of Blackstone, and it will happen to you. Stephen Schwarzman dreamt that he would take New York by storm, and he did. What would you do for your dreams?